Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey, today we're doing things that are very much different than what we usually do. A friend of mine, his pool pump has died. It actually seized up solid on the motor. But what we ended up with is it was cheaper actually to buy an entire replacement pump, the whole deal. And if you'll turn around and look, it's sitting right there on the ground. So we're going to install this today. Now, one of the things that's happened is when they put this in, they should have put couplings in here so that it can be removed. They did not do that. The way they've got this set up is it's screwed directly into the pump housing, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to deal with. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to take the motor completely off. That's going to take the weight off of it, and then we're going to cut this off and remove this entire housing all at once. And that's going to unscrew it from over here. Now if you'll take a look, here's a problem. This space between here and here is so short that we really can't effectively glue a new fitting onto it and make this work. So what I'm going to do is preserve this screw-on fitting here and then set it up with an elbow so it'll drop down. We're going to lower the motor a little bit and move it back some. And we'll replumb it and it'll work just fine. So we're going to go through all that and we're going to show you how it's done. Okay, so we pulled the pump out and we got the weight off of it, but if you look, there are some things going on in here that we're finding inside the actual pump, and there's more in there that shouldn't be there. There's all kinds of garbage inside the impeller. Well, all this stuff is going to contribute to locking this pump up. So it's moving, but it gets to a certain point and it's dragging. So there's a problem in here that needs to be fixed. But again, it was cheaper just to replace the entire unit than it was to fix this one. Okay, so if you look down here, we cut this pipe off. But what we want to do is we want to preserve as much of this pipe as we can. When we put the couplings in here on this, we're going to gain plenty of length. But there are some places where we're going to need little pieces of pipe here and there. So we preserve what we can so we don't have a lot of waste. Now I'm going to try to unscrew this and see if we can get it out of this pump housing. If I can't, I'm just going to rotate the whole thing around and see what we can do. Okay, now when they did this, they didn't do everything wrong. There are some things they did right. These fittings were put in with pipe dope. And what that does is it seals it, but it makes it easy to take apart too if you have to later on, like we're having to do now. All right, this is a sawzall or reciprocating saw. As you can see, the blade reciprocates in and out. Okay. We're going to use this because we found out we can't get this housing past this filter element. So we're going to have to cut this housing in half in order to take it off. And all of this is made necessary because this little piece of pipe is too short to do anything with. We can't fix that. So we're kind of stuck with having to use that fitting and move on from there. It's either that or replumb the entire thing. And that's just too much. It's too much expense, too much time, too much aggravation. This pump is never going to be serviceable again anyway. It was pretty torn up. So cutting this housing in half isn't really going to hurt us much. So that's what we're about to do, is chop this thing up. Well, here we go.
You got there, Bill.
Okay. We got the bottom side of the pump housing out.
Okay.
Right here. So now...
Is that reusable?
No, that's done. It's very done. Now this, we can crank right out. Once we crank this off, now we have a usable piece of pipe here that we didn't have to destroy right here, because this being so short, we couldn't really replace this. Kind of stuck with what we had. All right, we're going to cut this pipe off.
You want me to hold it?
No, I got it. But I'm going to show you how I measured it. All right, so I wanted enough pipe left on the end of here so when I put this coupling on, okay, this compression coupling, the pipe is going to be about that long, okay? So from about here to here, and that gives me enough room. Now again, this is going to be able to move up and down a little bit on here and still work just fine because the gasket is here in the end. I don't know if you can see that gasket in there. That black gasket, it's right here in the end. So the pipe has to be at least long enough to pass that gasket, and then we can clamp this down on here. So What we're going to do right now is a process called dry fitting, and that's just where we set up our fittings to go together to fit into our unit and get everything lined up the way we want it. Okay? Now, one of the things we got to get in here is this coupling. So this may have to move forward or back a little bit so we've got enough room. We have two of these couplings like this, one on the output and one on the inflow. Okay? And that's what we need to get this plumbed. So there we go. Okay, as I said, we're just dry fit this into place. So what I did was I took this clear off and I slipped the gasket up into pipe, into position, and this is on there. So now all I got to do is set that, crank that knob down, and once I tighten it up, we're not going to leak. Okay, so we're finishing up on the dry fit. When you cut with a hacksaw on these pipes, you're always going to get these little burrs around it that you need to take off. And if you just take your pocket knife and scrape across it like that, they come right off, means a whistle, and you got no problem with it. Now what you don't want to do is leave all those little shavings on the end of there, and the reason why is because they end up going through the pump. And the less crap you have going through the impeller, the better off it is for the pump. So since we're putting in a brand new pump, let's make sure that it doesn't blow up. So we scrape off all the junk.
You know a lot about pumps and plumbing and stuff like that. Why is that?
Been around a long time, had to do a lot of this stuff. Remember, Hillbilly High is a good place to graduate from. Yes, sir. Remember, hillbilly don't mean undereducated. It just means we got a different way of looking at things.
Let me ask you, when one of these big old branches falls on my PVC pipe again, what's the chances of it snapping?
Pretty low. This is schedule 40, so the walls are pretty thick on it. It's pretty solid stuff.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you look, it's a good 1/8 of an inch thick.
Because the branches do fall, as you can see
No,
right
I know.
there.
They've snapped off other pieces before. I've seen that. But
Yeah.
it's pretty thick.
Very good.
It should hold up all right. But, all right, so if you watch. Now what we're doing here is that, like I said, this is called the dry fit process. So once we've got it so everything is basically assembled like this, this is how it's going to end up being. Now right now none of these pipes are glued together, so that's the next thing we're going to do. And we're going to start at one end, okay, and just work our way through and glue all this stuff together. Now where we're going to have to start gluing is right here at this joint, then this joint, then this joint, then this joint. Now the last thing we're going to do is this bottom joint, because we have to put pipe dope around these threads so it doesn't leak, and crank it into place. Then we glue that last fitting. Okay, now the beauty of this is when we have to take this pump apart, we can separate it at these two compression couplings and just pull the whole thing out, and we don't have to replumb the entire system to put in a new pump. Okay, what we have here is PVC glue, and this is what they call PVC primer. Now what this does basically is it just kind of strips off the outside layer, okay, of the pipe. If you notice how shiny and all that is, what it kind of does is just prepare it so that the glue bites in a little deeper. Now what this is an acetone based glue, so it literally melts the plastic on both of these parts. And what that does is it literally welds them together. So this joint isn't going to come apart once you stick it together. Now if you look right here on this fitting, you'll see this blue stuff right in between the fitting and the actual housing. That's what this is. This is a thread sealant, okay? We used to call it pipe dope. And it just seals this up so it's got a good seal and it doesn't leak. Okay, that's the pipe primer that gets it ready to receive the glue, so it sticks really good.
Okay.
Alright, so if you'll watch, what I'm about to do now is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to use this pipe dope. I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, this stuff, don't be shy with this stuff. Go ahead and use it. It's not going to hurt you. You can't put too much of this on. The only way it's too much is if it's kind of a mess, but it doesn't really matter. The idea is to make this fitting watertight so it doesn't leak. So we're going to unscrew this fitting, and we're going to add the pipe dope. So, as you can see, this stuff's really thick. It's like mud, okay? And we're just going to start filling in these threads with this stuff. Like I said, you don't have to be shy with it. You can't hardly get too much of this stuff, okay? So you can see there's quite a bit on there. So now we're simply going to screw it back into the hole, okay? And when it goes in, it feels so smooth. It's almost like it's greased now. But that's what you want. When it's doing that, you know it's doing its job. And as you can you see it kind of running around in a circle as I twist it? That means it's sticking to everything, and that's what we want. So we're going to take it and we're going to crimp it down a little bit. Don't over tighten it, because remember, these threads are plastic and you can strip them out. Alright, so now we're going to do the same thing on this end, on the other threaded fitting that's on this end. Now the place where you don't want to use pipe dope is on these couplings. You don't use it there, it's not needed there. Okay, so this one is the same thing, it's just an inside fitting. If you want, you can put it on here instead if you're more comfortable with it. Alright, so we just put in the last hookup over here. Okay, and that's right here. And we've got everything built all the way through to here, but the difference this time is we've got these couplings, so if this motor burns out or anything goes bad, you can remove the pump and take it in to have it rebuilt, and that's going to save you a lot of money, because that way they don't have to come out and do a house call. So that's what we did today, was fix that problem.
What are you doing?
Alright, we're going to connect the wires up to this puppy, but before I can do that, I got to get these old ones out of this pipe. Okay? Now, in here we have 3 wires. We have a ground wire, we have the black hot wire, and the white neutral wire. Okay? And so from this point we just got to hook it up. Alright, so we're going to, like I said, we're going to use the existing wire, but we are going to change out of this plastic fitting that was in there, because I do want to use this flexible conduit. Okay, this is going to make the whole system a little drier inside. So what I'm going to do now is get this wire fed back out through here. Okay. And now I can put this coupling, which couples to this flexible conduit, into place. I'll get that tightened up so it's solid, okay? And then we're going to pull these wires out, and we will simply use the existing wire. Now the way this pump is wired, it goes through a switch, so you can select either 230 volts or 115. Tight. So sometimes what you need to do is kind of pre-bend your wire a little bit, so that it's going to loop around that corner. Otherwise it's going to really fight you.
Do you need a little KY?
Well, there actually is something called wire lube. One of the more popular companies.
I got Vaseline.
No, it's called Yellow 77 Wire Lube, and it's a water-soluble soap, basically. And it's just made for pulling wires through pipes and things like that. So there is actually a product that's made for this, to lubricate wires. Believe it or don't.
I believe it. Listenol could work.
Sure it could, but we don't need to. Alright, so
You did it.
now we put the cover back on the back of this. And since this is wired with that switch, I don't have to remount any of these circuits anywhere. And they're just ready to go. Okay. Okay, so over here on the electrical side, we wired into the timer over here, according to the instructions that come with the pump. And so we should be all set up, all right? So we've got, you can see here you have line in, this is where you put your lines coming in, and this is where you put your loads on 2 and 4. And that's exactly where we put them. Okay, so we should be good to go. We put in all the appropriate fittings all the way through, so we're solid electrically. We've got a bond wire grounding this and the other pump together, so this should be solid and ready to go as soon as we fill it up with water and give her a test run. Okay, so you can see that what we've done here is we've, instead of cutting a pipe off here where it was too small, okay, we went ahead and used the existing parts and put some pipe dope in here, and we got ourselves a fitting, and we glued all this together. Right here we have a coupling. Now this coupling still needs to be tightened up, which I'm about to do that, but it's glued all the way through to the pump. Okay, so we're solid to there. And this is on the input side. Okay, we got another coupling here, which again needs to be tightened up. It's a little bit loose yet. Okay, and once we get that all tightened up, then this becomes very solid and it doesn't leak, and we should be good to go. So the next thing we're going to have to do is take this top off and pour water in this so we've got a prime on the pump. Okay, and then we should be good to fire it up and test run it and see how it does. Get out. And guess what? It's running like a champ. All right, there we go. And that's us. Hey, we'll see you next time. I'm Bill 1911. And then unscrew the entire filter basket here. We have our glue. We have our couplings. We have bags flying all over the place because it's windy. Well, as you can see, that line on my pants, that's where I forgot to put the top back on the glue, and I turned it, and I ended up with it in my shoe and everything. So, moral of the story is make sure you keep your top back on your glue. All right, so well, one of two things is going to happen. Either the pump is going to start, or it's going to be smoke and flames. This part will get edited out. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? That's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means, come to visit us at askbill1911.com.